Good morning, everyone. Larry, you want to kick us off?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I am Larry Barabino Jr. I am the chairman of Children and Youth. I'm the chairman of the board for Children and Youth Planning Board. And I want to welcome you guys to our Youth Master Plan. This is part three. We appreciate everyone that have participated in one and two and all of the exciting things that have come out of one and two so far. And as we look at going into this next phase of it, we definitely appreciate everyone that's here and participating. And with saying that, I always enjoy having the privilege, the pleasure, and the honor of introducing our fierce leader, Karen Evans.
All right, Larry, I like fierce. That's good. Let's start with that. Good morning, everyone. We are so happy to be with you today and thankful that you made time to be here too. We've got lots coming our way and want to remind you that your check-in in terms of signing in is happening by way of the chat box. Please make sure you put your name and your organization in the chat box. We've got that to do in terms of making sure we've got some sense of who's with us. We're going to do it a little differently today and ask you to do another step in that journey because we are about the work today. So in today's space, we're going to ask you to include your Youth Master Plan category area alongside your name. So if you go to the I think you can see it under my name. You see it under my name, you see SJ, because I'm going to be working in the safety and justice group today. But if you go to your participants list, and in the participants list, go to your name, move over to the right where it says rename, and indicate which one of the groups by initials you're going to be focused on in terms of your participation today. We're going to be breaking up into those group categories to really drill down on the work and need you to select which one of those you're going to be part of. Your putting that alongside your name helps us sort and sift when we do the grouping. So if you're spaced in place, please SP, economic stability, ES, safety and justice, SJ, youth voice, YV, learning, L, health and well-being, HWB. And I'm hopeful that y'all are able to make these directions come to pass because it will help us immensely when we are moving towards grouping for our bigger work that's coming in just a few moments. Everybody good to go? All right, so here's what the agenda looks like for today. We are doing a welcome and a check-in. It's been a minute since we've been together, so we've got a different kind of check-in that we're going to run with you. Then we're going to move into some breakout conversations, really pushed around how we're going to do our work together and how we're going to advance coordination as our action. We're going to further talk about this aligning to take action specifically as we think about the measures. We're wanting to address baselines and targets today. And then we're going to redirect around how we're going to dive into this work, looking at how we make sure we're aware and understanding current work so that we are leveraging and not recreating something that already exists. We're wanting to play smart in this field and think we've done a good job up to this point at doing that. We want to continue to do that as we go. Next slide. So let's do some checking in. It's been a while since we've gotten together. And so we've been living in this COVID space for some time. We all suffer from COVID fatigue that has impacted us in a host of different ways, personally and professionally. And we are not without awareness about that. And recently we have passed through and continue that pass through Hurricane Ida and its impact to our community. We believe that that's played out in terms of the energy that you're holding now. And so just as you measure the energy of your technology to plug in for some recharging, we're asking you to check in now around your level of energy on a scale of 1 to 4 to really understand where you are at this moment. This is about you. We're coming and connecting together, bringing our energy into this space, kind of wanting to find out how you're doing. So we've got a poll for you. And if you're doing, if your energy is good, you've got full charge, then that would be a 4. If you're kind of working from vapors and need to get yourself on a charger pretty quick, then you're probably looking at a 1. And then there are spots 2 and 3 in between. We're wanting you to take the poll and let us know where you are today. So take a minute. The poll is now on the screen, and put yourself in there. All right, this is good. A couple more people might want to fill it in, but in the meanwhile, you can see on the screen where we are, where we're going. And there's some comments in the chat that are pretty interesting too. So we are 100% polled, and you can see where the bars are showing up for this group. So I want to check in with y'all. We're looking, there's a few of us who are on the 1 bar in the Vapors program, but largely we are in the 3 bar space. And just wanted to check in if there are a couple of folks who can come off mic and talk a little bit about where you are and how this reads when you look at the summary of this group, how this reads in terms of the context of our currency, our New Orleans space. What's your take on what this says about where we are as a space in time in terms of energy? I see you, Roland. Go ahead.
No, I was asking Karen, is it showing? Because I can't see is there a summary? Maybe I'm not.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Now I'm going to show you. Now, can you see the results now?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. I didn't push the right button there, Roland.
I'm not the first person to comment. I was just telling you that it wasn't.
Thank you.
It wasn't up. Okay.
Thank you. I couldn't see the comments. All right, so there you go. And now we're back. So what's give me a couple of folks. Larry, are you open?
Yeah, I'm open. So
Okay.
let me say from my perspective, in my point of view, I'm a 2 as it relates to battery level. Because as the CEO of NORD Commission, when COVID hit, we never shut down, we transitioned. I never worked from home. I worked from my office, and NORD continued to, as we transitioned programming to online, but with a lot of it, we still had to maintain clean parks, playgrounds, things like that nature, because the residents who were home went to parks and playgrounds. And through the midst of going through that process and starting summer camps and reopening and reprogramming, I personally never shut down. And I've also, in the process of managing and running NORD, participated in the CYPB programming and processing with the youth master planning. But then on top of that, Ida hit, NORD opened up 8 cooling centers immediately after Hurricane Ida to serve residents in the city of New Orleans, where we never stopped. And even during Hurricane Ida, we opened Rosenwald Center up as an emergency shelter, where we housed 90 residents during Hurricane Ida. So I haven't had a day off. And my battery's on too.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Larry. And thank you for sharing that. And I thank you for the cooling centers and the recharging stations, because they benefited me directly. I thank you for that. Others, give me one other person who can share what this says to them and how you're doing.
This is Roland.
Okay, Roland.
I was just going to say that I'm hoping that this means that folks are starting to get their feet back under them a little bit, following, what was a pretty rough start to the semester. I think one of the things that happened, and this is pretty indicative even what we're doing here at Dillard, was I think sometime in June or July, I think we were thinking that we were sort of rounding a corner with the pandemic. And then, and and in some regards, we had sort of let our guards down a little bit to say, okay, well, we're at least getting back to normal. And I think with the Delta really threw us for a loop. So here at Dillard, I can speak for, we really had to make a lot of changes to what we were doing and how our students came back and the kinds of things we needed to do. And so that part, I think, even if you had gotten some level of energy this summer, I think that kind of knocked the wind out of your sail heading into the fall semester. And then it had ripple effects for K to 12 and, even us all trying to go back to work and that kind of thing. So I think the storm, set us back, but I do hope that now we're about a little more than a month after the storm. I hope that we're starting to kind of get our legs under us. And I think this group specifically has to have a resiliency that even other areas don't have to have, because like Larry said, we didn't really get the day off and that kind of thing. So it's almost like we've got to, pull ourselves up and get back out there because our kids need us to be available and be ready to serve them. And so we're always kind of in crisis mode with this team. And so I think we are just starting to kind of get our legs back under us a little bit. And hopefully we don't have anything else in the near future that kind of sets us back again.
Thank you for that, Roland. And thank you for helping to remind us that we are being counted on by our young people. I want to remind all of us here that we are better when we are energized so that we can serve others too. So I want to encourage you to find ways to refill your tank, because it matters that we are well, and it matters that we are well enough to forge ahead. I think the other side of that for us is that the energy that we can share, there's some of these fours in here who could maybe infect us with a little bit of reminded energy that we could attach to just to get the work done, because our work doesn't stop, as Larry says. Our work goes on, and for our purposes, we are expected to carry the torch in preparation for what's next. So we thank you all for being here, but we also want to just point out that we recognize that you've been through and continue to go through the work in ways that may affect you, and your capacities may be different today than they were. And glad to hear Roland remind us that it appears that we may be lifting up, but let's not forget that we still need to continue to restore our energy, because our energy is being called upon to be available for the work that's coming our way and that continues to come our way. So be well is what the message is. Take good care of yourselves. And in our space today, we wanted to acknowledge that too, because we are not here in isolation. Our coordination muscle that we're trying to develop is dependent upon energy. Our ability to work together depends upon how each other shows up in the space. And so we have to find room to check in. And that was our effort at doing that today. So thank you all for participating in that. We want to remind you too that we're asking for every person to go to the participant list and identify which of the categories within the Youth Master Plan you're looking to focus on today. And that is, we say today because we know that some of you all are cutting across a couple of different categories. So we're asking you to choose one so that we can make sure we put you in the right groupings when we get into the group work. All right. If you need some more direction around how to make that happen, please hit us in the chat box and we'll make sure to get you some specifics about how to do that so that you're well marked in the space. So let's talk about this coordination for action and this working together piece, because while we have completed phase 1 and 2, which is laying the foundation, the plan in place, it is now time for phase 3, which is doing the work that makes this come together. That the work without, our fruit doesn't exist if we don't do something with it. And so we're looking for action now. That's what this is about. And it's action because we've got a mandate, and our mandate says that we are really doing this for others. This is a community effort. This community is broad and all folks are included and share in the space. We were driven by Youth Vision to get us started. We engaged youth community sector leaders in designing the solutions and the action strategies. We've garnered some supports and inputs from our leaders, city council, mayor, and now school board, who have all rendered their support officially to this plan. And now we are in the place where we share ownership of it, that this belongs to this broad community. As a community of owners, we're going to drive implementation. And our commitment as Youth Master Plan partners is to be there to make sure that the support needed is available. We expect to do things continually and differently. And one of those things that we want to acknowledge is that there is lots of history in this space of a variety of efforts that have preceded us, that may be underway right now, that may look like or be similar enough to the areas that we're focusing on here. We want to ask you to trust this process and stay with us. That the history and the experience that you had was what it was, and we're hoping to change that by doing some things differently, primarily centering on youth engagement, youth co-creation, youth leadership to move this forward and to make sure it rests well in the vision they provided and in the execution that they will monitor. We have had some foundational success. We expect to build on that success in completion of phase 1 and phase 2, all of which integrated the voices of many. It is our expectation that that foundation holds us well to proceed on purpose in action for phase 3. Next slide. So what does this path bring? What's in this transitioning from planning to doing? Well, there's several things that are laid out, all of which you will be engaged in because we believe that this is the work that we do together. And in that space today, for our October meeting, we're looking at the bigger picture. We're resetting because we're coming back together and checking in with one another. We're looking at how we can make sure we name where the work is intended to take us. What are our population level change targets relevant to a baseline that we've identified? How do you see and understand those targets and baselines to show up? Are they accurate? Do they need adjustments? Do we need more inputs? What about the way we want to manage our coordination work? How do we make sure that that work moves in ways that represents how you want to make sure as a group of owners, we move the work forward and manage it? What are our norms around that? We move straight from that work to the November and December tables, where we really do continue to look at the ways the work will work and layer in funding, evaluation, and other efforts that are underway so that we do the right kind of integration and upload necessary to lift this plan towards execution for real. In December, we're hoping to break through in the identification of gaps and barriers and what we need to do to make sure we address and move those in ways that get us the kind of successful access to our paths that we're setting out. Finalize our whole look on this ownership and responsibility levels in a very transparent way, and then make sure that we've got our management practices in place to honor the work and see it and offer constructive feedback and supports where necessary. In between time, we expect that there will be in between time work, that the sharing of data and information and activities will be moved through the owner community and the Youth Master Plan partners. And then that we will also look to the owner community to address some of the things that only the owner community knows in terms of their actions. That those things will interplay within your circle, and we'll hope to keep those lifted up in whatever the agreed upon management practices are for the projects. All of this laid out to ensure that we execute the Youth Master Plan strategies on point and on purpose. We're looking forward to doing that and co-creating that with you. So this whole idea about owning, I want to just circle around that for a bit, because the language can sometimes make people a little uneasy. But I want to frame it this way, that from the outset, when we launched the Youth Master Plan thinking and building and co-creating space, all stemming from Youth Vision, we believed that the Youth Master Plan of New Orleans belonged to this community, that the broad community owns the plan. And the folks who get to work within it to make sure that the deliverables are real represent an owner community. And so when we use the term owner, we use it in the broad sense that this doesn't belong in a silo, that this is a connected work that we all have a strap in, and that together we create the tapestry of work that moves forward in a coordinated, lockstep way to ensure the success of our children birth to 24 years of age. That there's work to do in every category, across every lane, and if we can play well in the yard, we might be able to get some impacts that we haven't yet seen. But it's going to require us to show up as if we're invested in the result. And that's what owning can do. And so the way that we look at this is that the silos that we know exist in our community, we have an opportunity to disrupt them through active coordination. And I'm going to use that coordination muscle in a repeat fashion because that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build connection and coordination across sectors to ensure that we leverage for greater impact. That each solution is advanced by a primary owner, someone who is sort of taking the lead at the owner community table. And through that lead, they're paying attention to what kind of current work or emerging work may exist so that we can leverage that work with new work that might need to come alongside or be added to in order that we increase the impact of our collective work. That all the owners and the solutions that we want to advance are really about moving this entire vision that the young people gave us forward. And so we see the role of owners to include these points here as a start. We expect that there are others that can be added, but I want to just hit a few of these and let you know that we'll make all this available to you. But first and foremost, to just show up, what you've done, thank you, and expect to win, and then deliver as if you expect it. Additionally, we want to make sure that we're identifying these current and emerging works so that we can really build the right kind of connected, collective work plans so that the Youth Master Plan does not represent yet another incomplete practice, that it is in fact a living, breathing, working thing that delivers places where people can connect and intersect to advance and leverage their impact. That we share data, we share information, we share knowledge so that we can address the barriers, the policies, the costs, the resources that can move this thing forward. That we participate in lifting up and sharing the process of our outcomes, the impact of our collective work, and the body of work that comes through the Youth Master Plan. And we have no fear of being accountable for what we do, the tracks in our progress, the measures of our continuous quality improvement and outcome improvement, and that we agree on approaches to how we want to move our work forward. We are easily able to identify resources that are interested in funding collective work, and we stand comfortably in the space of acknowledging that we represent a collective work worthy of funding. And there are things that could be missing. So I want to offer you a window of opportunity. If you can think of something that should be added, hit me. Share something now if you've got something hot on your mind, or feel free to get me with an email or in the chat box. I'm going to move on to what we're going to do today. Our plan today is to hold a meaningful and direct discussion around what coordinated action needs to look like. What does working together need to include? What are the pieces that need to represent the norms of how we're choosing to move this work from planning to action? We're also going to set some decisions in place, make some choices about how we see the baselines and the targets, which for our purposes are going to cause us to move toward execution of the goals that have been finalized in the plans from stage one and stage two, phase one and phase two of the plan. And then we're going to position momentum to continue moving forward as we want to advance this knowledge base in the sessions to come and in between the sessions. We're asking for 2 hours at a time, which is not enough to really do the big lift that we know is required, but it is enough to organize our lift, to coordinate our efforts, and to expect that there'll be work happening in between and in an ongoing manner so that we can follow the work and ensure that it doesn't drop. That's our plan for today. So before we go into the next piece, I want to just check in with you and see how y'all are doing. Everybody good? All right, having heard nothing else, we're going to set up the breakouts. So first, make sure that you have labeled your name under your image so that we can put you in the right group. Because in these groups, we're going to do, as we said, we're going to really look at how we want to make the work, how we want to build in the process of norms for the working owner groups. And here are the 4 buttons that you're going to have. There will be a documenter in each of the breakouts to capture your thinking. But the questions that you'll discuss in your groups are these. What forms or formats exist already where coordinated action might be in place? What are the strengths of that work? what may be some gaps in the work? And then what would an ideal coordination state look like if there were no barriers to possibly creating ideal, where we could either leverage what's existing or create something new? What would ideal look like to you? We want to become and move toward ideal, but we've got to kind of define it. So that's what that is asking. And then what type of project management tools or ongoing check-ins would be helpful for the Youth Master Plan implementation? We're asking you to become the force that pushes the work forward, delivering it, ensuring it. What kind of project management tools or check-ins would help support that continuous movement? And then finally, what does accountability look like for the solutions to be implemented to you? How would accountability be demonstrated? What's the best method for that? And how would we best support your work? What would support look like, feel like? What would it need to include? Those are our 4 points of concern. We're not just asking these questions recreationally. We expect to build the coordination process by way of your inputs. So we want you to take some time right now in these breakout groups to do that building. Have those conversations and be as clear as you can, gather as much input from the folks in your breakouts as you can. And then we're going to come back together and hear some of those highlights and make sure we're gathering the right information and pushing the right envelope forward. So right now, you're going to be put into breakout groups. And each group, as I said, is going to have a documenter. And you go forward, accept, and join your breakout group now. Okay, I think we're all back together again. We're going to do a quick check-in and ask for each of the breakouts to their facilitator and or their documenter to lift up some of the highlights from your group. And certainly group members, if you hear something that doesn't sound like it's enough, we welcome your insertion. We're looking to hear at least some of the highlights, couple highlights from each group, and then we'll wrap this particular portion up, knowing that we're going to be using this information. So let's start with space and place.
Cool. Hi, everyone. This is Jack from the Office of Youth and Family, as I was our note taker. So I think we focus primarily really on the first 2 questions around existing coordination structures. On our first solution, which is related to improving and maintaining safe and active mobility options. We talked about a few things, including the Complete Streets Working Group, which is comprised of different entities and community organizations, and using that potentially as a way to move this one forward. We also talked about other ongoing public engagement opportunities, such as RTA has a rider advisory committee that meets monthly. The Moving New Orleans Bikes project has neighborhood meetings whenever there's a new infrastructure project, and using some of these public engagement opportunities as ways for the Youth Master Plan Steering Committee and young people as well to plug into those existing structures. I think on our first solution as well, we talked a little bit about, one of the questions we had was really thinking about, there's not necessarily a structure around that social infrastructure mapping right now. There's a lot of work around transit redesign and, infrastructure redesign and thinking differently about that, but really mapping that social infrastructure. We know, I know Angela, I don't think it was on the call today, but Catherine talked a little bit about, that Angela and her team are already working on that, but we were thinking about if there's any, it doesn't really seem like there's an ongoing meeting that's happening around that necessarily.
Thank you, Space and Place. Thank you, Jack. Economic stability.
Hello, Monique Robinson, Caffeine Reconcile. So our group at Economic Stability, we highlighted the existing work in the forums that Louisiana Budget Project is convening around minimum wage and raising the minimum wage through coalitions like their Skills Coalition. They're currently working on that with, in preparation to the February and March state legislature. Also, we do know that the city of New Orleans has a living wage. And so there's an existing ordinance, and getting that background or getting plugged into how that process or the details of that process and in developing that ordinance as well as executing the ordinance. And then for the economic stability solution focus on CTE, currently Youth Force NOLA is in that space, and they have monthly convenings where they have a steering committee that discusses career and technical education. And NOYA, New Orleans Youth Alliance, and NOLA BA launched earlier this year, Let's Discuss Data, which doesn't specifically talk about CTE. However, it is a focus as they are looking to reduce the number of OI with re-engagement and prevention and connecting young people to post-secondary opportunities. And so that includes career and technical education. And then the Workforce Development Board, the New Orleans Workforce Development Board, we have members as well as the chair that's engaged in CYPB that are doing the introduction of the Youth Master Plan, but again, just connecting the dots of how this work impacts or can have an impact on the Workforce Development Board.
Very good, thank you. Economic stability, Monique, appreciate that. Let's go to learning.
Hey folks, Isaac McDonald here, reporting for Learning. So we talked about the fact that there are dedicated collaboratives focused on ending the school to prison pipeline. Those exist at the local level and also at the state level, and the importance of working through those. We also talked about the fact that there are different attempts to try and scale approaches across schools to varying effects, but the importance of OPSB really taking a lead in pushing forward both policy change and boots on the ground. And I think we really ended with the understanding that it would be important for the Youth Master Plan to continue to be that backbone to push forward both of those efforts because of some of the decentralization and disaggregated things that are happening. So both leveraging existing and pushing forward as a backbone with some of our takeaways.
Great, thank you. Youth Voice, let's hear what you have.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jada Washington. I'm the public ally for the New Orleans Children and Youth Planning Board. A lot of what we talked about in the Youth Voice group is one main highlight is that we need more conversation around the coordination for younger developmental stages. That seems to be a gap in Youth Voice or in our coordination. There are opportunities available at other programs such as Grow That for apprenticeship opportunities around agriculture, offering upward mobility within their program to youth and community members, as well as compensation for their time and efforts. And also there is a NOYA Youth Fellowship that prepares and connects young people to youth civics education. And NOYA also hosts a professional development program around Youth Voice. And we also discussed a need for training around media and editorial development, and maybe there's room for workshops to be created. As far as the state of coordination, we talked about needing more of shared process around youth assessment for programming, with one of those specific programs being Lead New Orleans. Also a need for creating shared language, shared philosophy, and trusting youth as experts around what they need for us to coordinate. And kind of starting with smaller organizations to model what that coordination would look like. We've got a lot of great tools that we want to use to manage projects, but also one of the main tools that we want to use is text messaging as an updating process for what work looks like, and kind of get some bite-sized communication updates around what is needed from programs, and just giving a little bit of smaller suggestions for support to make more effective movements. And as far as holding us accountable, just making sure that we want to check in with youth to ensure that accountability, having ongoing conversations around the year instead of written reports, and making sure that we look at the NOIA assessments for authentic youth engagement and equity and inclusion as modes of evaluation for the work.
Okay, thank you, Youth Voice. All right, health and well-being. Let's hear what you've got.
Hi everyone, I'm Maggie Herman, and I'll share out the health and well-being findings. We talked about a lot of current programs and organizations that exist that might do some organization to organization and if need sharing specifically around services for new parents, but there was kind of a resounding need for a further connection across the landscape around so that all organizations know what's available, and there's a really high regard for warm handoffs, so that referral piece is very important. We also identified a need to connect more closely with the early childhood education space within the context of new services for parents, as well as being super intentional around trauma-informed care as it relates for services for new parents. So that's our high level overview. We didn't get to tools, so we're excited to have that conversation in a different way.
Great. All right, I'm gonna provide an update from Safety and Justice and offer any of my Safety and Justice members to share out if I don't get it right. We talked about the sort of the general context for this coordination work and this sort of working together space. And so we identified that there isn't a lot that currently exists. There are a couple things that the Violence Prevention Institute, which feels very much sort of siloed, but could be an opportunity. And then there is an emerging opportunity that is in the prevention space that is in need of, it's still under development, but it's in need of funding and sort of the resources to get it off the ground, which sounds incredibly familiar to me. But there isn't a lot of identified forums that exist currently in this safety and justice or in the arena that we were speaking to. And looking at what ideal coordination would look like, it would require time that was funded to participate in a coordinated effort. That funding and the absence of it, the expectation that we could voluntarily pull this off on a regular basis seems a little old school, and that there has to be a new way to approach this that includes funding for not just the participation, but for the backbone support that will help make it easier for folks to participate in the process. Another existing collaborative that was named, which is interesting, is CSOC, but we'll stop there. So the ideal requires that folks participate, that they hold sharing as a value, but that has to be done with sort of meted out with some resources. And then we talked about the type of project management that folks would need. And there was this clear understanding that folks would be benefited from making their participation easy if there was a project consultant who could help hold up that project management work for teams. That because people have full plates already in their current work, coming into this shared collective impact space would be more easily done, and offer more continuity of practice if there was support to make that practice more meaningful and followed through. And then there was this discussion around accountability, which was around being clear about the agreements up front, providing support when agreements kind of go off rail to make sure that we reroute back toward the agreement and deliverable. And then when that continues to fail, offer consequences that can be remediated. And that is where we landed. Anything else from my social justice group? Did I get y'all right? All right. So with that, we're going to do a couple things. One is that we asked you for this work because we expect to include this as we structure and frame out the ways we will build this work going forward. So these ideas were not just for the sake of ideas, they were in fact to inform the way we want to structure the owner community and the working process. We will build this out, use the information that you shared, layer it into a real definite process plan so that you have the ways of working that are reflected in what in fact you've built out in your ideas today. For now, we want to take a quick 5-minute break, come back, and then we'll do the meaningful work of identifying the baselines and targets. So please take a break now until 12:15, stretch, move, and then come back, and we'll be ready to move into the next part of this work. Thank you all. All right, we're heading back. I am pleased to turn over the reins to Maggie Herman, who is our Manager of Planning and Initiatives for CYPB. Maggie, take us away.
Okay, great. Thanks, Karen. Welcome back, everyone. So now in the second part of the meeting, we are going to dig into aligning and taking action. So what that means is we're going to set some targets. Here's why. We need to make sure that we're aligned around a common goal. Each youth master plan category has goals that are listed both in the phase 1 and phase 2 document. Those goals stay the same across those documents. And those are big, high impact population level change goals that we want to make sure that we're all aligned around. We also want to have the ability to measure success of our strategies. So how do we know that the work we're doing is working? And we also want to clearly define what we value. So within those goals, we say that we want to start measuring strengths-based indicators to see that we're working towards our common goal. What we measure is important, and it is wrapped up in what we value and what we want to work towards. So here's a little bit of context around our task for the day and also the larger goal indicator target conversation. So we have the goals in the youth master plan. Each category has about 2 or 3 goals named. And then we have a set of indicators that we're going to propose today and walk through and say whether those indicators make sense to help us track progress towards those goals. And each set of indicators will have targets that we're working for. So based on where we're at now, where do we want to be in 2 years and in 10 years? The reality around our shared indicators is that historically we don't share them very well across sectors, maybe across organizations. So that's a challenge that we live in. In growing our coordination muscle and the way that we work together, we also want to grow our data-driven coordination muscle. We want to be data informed, and we want to feel like the data that we have is reliable and that we can share it across sectors and across systems. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to review proposed indicators and the corresponding baselines. So when we go into breakout rooms, we'll look at some indicators that will be up for discussion, and then also look at what the current value is that we have, where we are now. We're going to provide input around the targets for those indicators. So where do we want to be in the future? We want to hear what you all say around some proposed targets that will be on the screen, whether that's too ambitious, not ambitious enough, what's realistic, and what's really bold. Where do we want to be at? And then we're going to align upon indicators and directions for targets. So it's going to help us determine what first step to take for action. That having a set of targets on where we go is really the foundation for moving and going. So that was a really rapid fire overview, but I want to make sure we have enough time in our breakout rooms to actually do that heavy lift. And so with that, I will pause for questions. If you have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat. And I know that we will get set up for breakout rooms in just a moment.
Hey there. Does anyone need help getting to the room they want to be in? Jillian, what room are you supposed to be in? It could be like youth voice, economic stability, health and well-being, space and place, learning. I'm missing one. Safety and justice, youth voice. Okay, all right, I'll move you there.
All right, as we wait for folks to reassemble, I'm hoping that your sessions were as impactful as ours. And I'm also sharing that perspective because we're not going to hear back from you at this moment in time. We're going to collect that information and share it with you through another door so that you can actually see all of the specifics around the baselines and targets for the things that you've agreed to today. So we won't spend time going around per group because we want to make sure we respect your time, know that you're going to get that information very, very soon. More to come. So with that, I want to point you toward what's coming, these next steps. We have set the calendar. If you haven't noted these dates, please do note these dates because what you've done today is the basis around which we'll be moving everything else forward. We'll be using November 9th and December 7th to do this owner level, owner community work a bit more. In the November space, know that we'll be bringing forward the evaluation data and evaluation plan in light of what you've identified. We want to make sure we can speak to what's possible from our data and information sharing space. And we want to talk about the funding plan relative to all the pieces that are moving in the Youth Master Plan and give you time to really continue this coordination work that you're building in your owner groups. We are looking in December to really work on these gaps and barriers and to finalize any kind of responsibilities in the owner space and solidify our management practices to hold project and go forward positions. Because in January, we're lifting off if we haven't already done so. We've heard today that there are many projects already underway. We're just going to make sure that we are all moving in a synergistic way to go forward on behalf of the children and youth of New Orleans. There'll be in-between work, and the in-between work has to do with sharing the data and activities and looking at ways that the Youth Master Plan partners can be of a support and assistance to the movement and work of the owner groups. And then of course, we expect that the owner groups will share around their actions that they're going to be staging together and as they need to throughout the in-between times. All of this designed and intended to advance the execution of the Youth Master Plan and its strategies. So that's where we're going. That sets up part of what that looks like. I'm going to turn over now to the team from TrepWise to walk you through one of the pieces of work that we're going to be asking you for in the in-between space. Isaac?
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Isaac from Trepwise. Great to see everyone again. I want to give you a quick overview. There will be weeks with heavier lifts and lighter lifts, or months with heavier and lighter lifts. Hopefully this homework leading up to November will not be too significant of a lift. What we know is that we need to understand what these actors, these owners that have been named and others.
Me and Jackson.
Sorry? Okay. Owners that have not been named, we need to understand what everyone is working on right now in relationship to their solutions. And we need to understand, do you have good longitudinal data or one-time data that you say, this should be included, not at this macro YMP level necessarily, but to just know if this solution is working. So what we're gonna send out for every YMP area is a spreadsheet that looks like this. You can see the 2 solutions here, advocacy for increased minimum wage, early exposure to career options and training, and there'll be a set of rows. And if you're an owner, you will have a row. And in your row, you'll fill out 2 questions. What strategic initiatives are you leading or involved with that intersect with this work, right? If I'm Step Up, I would be able to see, I think we are screen sharing. If I was Step Up, I would fill out the strategic initiatives I was working on related to raising the minimum wage. This is not every single activity. This is not every thought that I have, but really just like, oh, I'm currently leading this coordinating mechanism. I'm currently leading an advocacy initiative. And then we'd say, what data does your organization have access to that the Youth Master Plan could use to monitor progress? So especially if you have information that you're willing to share. If you have proprietary information you don't want to share, do not bother to list it in the spreadsheet. We're really looking for that shared data points that we can get. And then fill out your name and your email. For those who have a lot of solutions, we're going to be sending you a specific spreadsheet that you can use across all of your different solutions. But for most people, we ask that you go to your spreadsheet and fill out the information sometime in the next 2 weeks. So that is the homework, which is really about understanding the landscape, understanding the data landscape, so that when we get into those owner groups next week, we really understand everyone's roles.
Thank you very much, Isaac. And we're not getting into owner groups next week, but next time we gather. Just want to make sure people aren't on the edge of that.
I've given you even more time, 3 more weeks before the next meeting.
Yes. So here's what I need you to know about the next meeting. We've committed to making sure that we had space available during the day and then periodically in the evening so that we could encourage the participation of young people and community members and others who would like to join our collective space. That is our next meeting, November the 9th, 4 to 6 p.m. It will be virtual as well, but we would like to make sure that you're up on that and you're paying attention to that time frame because we don't want to miss you because the time changes. So this one meeting next month will be in the evening, and it's our expectation that we'll have more young people and community members in attendance. In that meeting, as I said before, we'll be reviewing and agreeing upon some of the data pieces, some of which you've named today, and in the evaluation plan overall. You'll hear more about that. You'll also hear and get to make agreement on the funding strategies that we're going to present and share. We're continuing to work on those and finalize them now so that we have a way of going forward based on funding that we know of and funding we need to pursue. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're able to go forward with more of the work planning that you will be doing in your owner groups. And that will be informed by the homework that you complete that Isaac just introduced. So with that, I offer you a window of opportunity to ask any questions. And Troy, I see your note in the box, so I'll circle back around that. All right, then I thank you so much for your energy, interest, and time, and look forward to reconnecting with that same energy when we convene again. We're available as your supporters to do whatever we can to advance the work, so feel free to reach out in between times. We'll see you on the 9th. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Maggie.
This is Karen's karaoke song.
I'm not gonna do karaoke though, but it's my song.